Vibe Union.
To the Vibe Union podcast.
Vibe Union podcast. A special Vibe Union podcast. We're not your usual white folks.
That took 3 seconds.
It took 3 seconds. Doesn't take long. And we're females.
Wow. I think, did they just go to sleep and wake up as us?
I think there's been some transformation happening.
I think so
but
too.
Talk about like radical change. We went from 2 white guys to 2 brown girls.
It's the radical change we were all hoping for.
Exactly. So, Vibe Union, for those who are not familiar, is a Melbourne creative collection. They do open mics, comedy, poetry on the regular in Melbourne. What else do they do?
Music, DJing, crypto. They don't do crypto.
They don't do crypto.
No.
Do they? I don't think. Are they financially savvy? Because I need financial
Did they look
advice.
financially savvy?
That is not the impression I got.
This is just turning into a roast of Vibe Union.
Yes, I'm so here for it. And before we go any further, let's do an acknowledgement. Make sure that we acknowledge the country that we are on and the privilege that it is to be on Bunurong, Bunwurrung and Wurundjeri Woiwurrung country of the Eastern Kulin Nations, who are the traditional custodians of the lands on which we are located and recording this and having shits and giggles against white folks. I'm sure that is appreciated. We do recognise the past atrocities against Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples of this land, and that Australia was founded on the genocide and dispossession of First Nations people. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. Sovereignty was never ceded. It always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Amen. I think that should be codified into an official prayer across all denominations.
Or a mantra.
Or a mantra.
A mantra.
Yeah. You probably have more authority on that than I do.
You have all the authority you want. We are here today right before the Poets for Palestine fundraiser.
Yes.
And we have a great lineup of poets. And
I'm very
all
much
proceeds,
looking forward to it.
Yeah, and all proceeds will be going to the PCRF. Did I get that right?
Yes, that's correct. Palestinian Children Relief Fund. Shall we introduce who we are?
Yeah. You go first.
I'm Hawraa Cash, your friendly neighbourhood poet, MC, human resource professional because it pays the bills, and co-MCing with the glamorous Shy. Take it away.
I am the glamorous Shy, short for Shayari, which means poetry in Hindi. I am an unfriendly neighborhood poet and a copywriter in advertising that pays the bills. I moved here 6 years ago from Dubai, and
Welcome.
Learning the lay of the land.
All the nuances of being Aussie.
Oh, fairy bread. Let's talk about it. No,
Can we talk about fairy bread?
Oh my
I mean, there
God.
are bigger topics. We are, going to be a lot more profound and articulate. Let's, give ourselves some more credit. But fairy bread.
Hundreds of thousands or whatever you call that.
Yeah, hundreds
on
and thousands.
Buttered bread.
Yes.
Was my first house party experience in
Oh my
Australia.
God.
And I spat it out into a napkin and said, "What the hell is this?"
Yep.
And they chucked me out of their house party.
Can I guess the ethnicity of the hosts?
Sure.
Were they white?
Yeah, whites and ethnicity.
Yes, it is a staple. Look, I have to, I will admit it is very bland and it's a very bizarre treat, but for someone that did grow up here in Australia, it was like so exciting when the teacher would pull out, I don't know why this was a treat.
Fat, carbs and sugar and be like, "Hey kids, your mom packed you this in a lunchbox." Yeah, I can
it was all the
imagine.
colours and like it was also an activity at school. I remember a couple of times in class, the teacher pulling out white sliced bread and butter and...
Sorry, ma'am, this is what
Yes.
colonial systems are getting you to pay to teach their kids in school.
I barely
Educated?
knew anything about our First Nations people, but I knew how to make fairy bread. Life skills 101.
Okay.
Australian education system doing us proud.
Yeah, I'm not sure proud is
Definitely sarcasm there.
great. Cool.
So today we are obviously talking about poetry, Palestine, all things art.
How nice of you to
we have a
grace
gay
us with your
crusher.
presence.
We are being crushed.
Have you been strolling through Collingwood looking at hostile architecture, have we?
Yes, I was.
Yes,
That's
yes.
so strange. Oh, okay. Hello. So am I? Because I still haven't finished my poem. I'm like,
Too bad. You signed up for this podcast.
Do you want to introduce yourselves to
yes.
Get cozy.
get in there? If it
Not that
helps,
cozy.
we haven't gone into anything like substantial, but we've already made some pretty decent commentary about life.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So what's going on? I just need to calm myself down a little
Okay.
bit.
Yeah, you breathe. We were
Yeah.
talking about fairy bread, how colonial systems teach people to like do like butter and thousands and hundreds on like carb bread.
Are you
and,
familiar
like,
with fairy bread,
fairy
Yaru?
bread? They teach
It's,
you at school.
it's
Am I
like
calling
a-
you Yaru or Rash? Who are you today?
Whichever one you really want. I don't know.
No, but what persona, what
probably
ego are you in right now in this podcast?
Yaru.
Yaru?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that's a good
What does Yaru mean?
Yaru means dude. Means like bloke in Farsi. Because
I was hoping for something far more mystical.
It literally means dude.
Dude.
yeah, because it was like.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was at the start. It was a bit, because I had some thoughts before I even started writing.
Yes.
And I was like doing music and stuff.
Yes.
And I had some thoughts that I knew are not gonna be okay or like safe for me to say.
Okay.
With my own
Controversial. Yes.
Right.
Okay.
And then at
So it's
some
your
point-
pen
so I-
name or whatever.
So I created this like pen name, but I didn't know because it was just I'm trying to disassociate an idea of some specific person of specific type.
Wait, so is this for you? Like, is
Yeah.
Yaru a personality for you to safely write within yourself, or so
Yes.
that you can have a voice that means you're safe within public domain? Which one?
Yes,
Both?
it's the first
Both.
one.
The first one.
First
Yeah.
one.
Within
So
yourself.
I feel like within
Oh.
myself, and then, because that's how it's. At first, I thought it was the second one, but then I realized that it's mainly for me. So, because when I got into the real stuff, when the Poets for not Poets for Palestine, it was Women Life Freedom movement started last year.
Yes.
That I was like shocked. I was like, oh my god, what's happening? And now I was like, okay, but you can't really be not showing your face or saying
True.
your name
True.
and then encouraging people to do that on the street or like things like that. So it felt like a bit off.
I mean, excuse my French, but I think you can do whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah.
I
yeah,
agree.
True. True.
I agree.
Yeah,
But
true.
I totally understand that perspective too.
No, but that's the
You
thing,
wanna
'cause,
show, yep.
you gotta, but I felt like that. I felt like I'd be, if I am encouraging people to, because one of the main acts was one of the main sort of weapons that are used in resistance is, what's it called? I forgot the English. Is civil.
What's it in Farsi?
Civil disobedience?
Yes.
Ah, so, yep.
I
Yeah?
get you, Yaru.
Yeah, that was a
I
very
get you.
good-
I
yeah.
understand.
Yeah, that was what I was trying to
I
think.
felt it. It's telepathic.
So that civil disobedience thing, I think you need to kind
we
of be there.
We are.
Yeah, in your face should be there if you
Yeah.
want to sort of. Otherwise, you're
Right.
not really disobeying anything, kind of thing.
I
yeah,
respect
I
and
understand
appreciate that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's
think-
kind of rebellious.
Yeah.
I respect that about you.
It's
You're-
nuanced.
You mean?
no, I like that.
Yeah, speaking
No,
of
no.
civil disobedience, I think that's actually a great segue into some of our conversation today around, poetry, politics, art, and where that all intersects and sits within each other. So when writing from like a political activist kind of space, in poetry, do you ever experience like self-doubt or anxiety, or are there any reluctance? Is there any reluctance or hesitation to do that?
It is because it's like very. You're trying to. I feel like you're trying to comment on something, and it's hard to not come off as opinionated when you're trying to do that. Like you're just trying to sort of, because it can be tricky, especially if people don't know you. They just hear an opinion. It could be like, okay, but, and if it's in a very abstract short format of a poem,
Yep.
for example, it could be a bit sort of. I understand that it could need a little bit more elaboration. But so that conversation also happens, I feel, internally. I don't know, but I think with all of us.
Yeah.
Before
100%.
actually
The
writing.
monologue.
the monologue that you're trying to first correct yourself, because I think that's the last thing you want as a sort of any form of artist, is to be kind of having the kind of wrong influence, I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, am I making sense?
No, 100%. I think that makes sense.
Well,
I think
art is generally a reflection of the times, right? It's usually a response to the human existence or the human experience.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times when you look historically at art, like visual or written, it is oftentimes a response to what the human experience is at that time. So it's really hard to not respond and to not have an opinion in the form of poetry or any other version of art. But of course, there's always that little bit of self-doubt, especially depends on the context, where you are, who might see it.
if it's authentic enough.
If it's authentic enough. Yeah, there's always...
Is it good enough?
Is it good enough?
Has it been done before?
Tell us, take it away.
Yeah, I think those are all questions I ask myself.
Yeah, all the
is
time.
Am I saying anything new? Are people going to think that I'm just doing it because it's a vanity poem?
Yeah.
Like, or are they going to think
Oh
that
my
I'm
God,
actually
I think
feeling
that
it?
all the time.
Right? And sometimes, like, and I talk to you about this, like, I will have to watch countless videos, read countless articles, put myself through it until I'm physically sobbing to pick a poem out of there. And I'm like, I will read the poem, and that night I'll be like, was that even worth it? And the next day, or when I do perform it on stage, like the one I did at Slamma, I was like, okay, fine, that was worth it.
Yeah.
But in that moment, or right before I perform it, when I'm practicing it, there is so much anxiety or self-doubt. And the biggest voice that comes through that is, for me, the biggest two things is it good enough? And are people just going to think you're faking it?
Yeah.
So is it good enough, and is it real enough? And those are my biggest two things. And then when I hear someone I know that poetry is not meant, or not any art form is not meant to be competitive, but when I hear someone do something that I deem is similar but better, there's not a part of me that's like hurt or upset or envious about it. It's more like, I'll just let them do that. Like, I'm not going to do this piece because I've already heard a better version of it.
Yeah. Okay. I'd argue that's subjective though, because we're so hard on ourselves, and I have the most terrible inner critic. If I wrote down the thoughts that I have, this person is certifiable, and I third person my inner critic, because there's no other way of surviving it. Honestly, it's the only way to put like some distance and to have a bit of perspective. Otherwise, I'd just be crippled by my own
100%.
internal monologue.
Does your inner critic have a name?
No, she isn't named.
Oh.
She isn't named, but I do refer to her as, she is a third person.
Yeah.
So like all the way that she speaks to me sometimes
100%.
is like absolutely atrocious.
Mine's a he.
Yours, that makes sense.
It's a Tito the mosquito.
Tito the mosquito.
Nags in your ear, like buzzes all
very
this
apt.
crap that you don't need.
Very apt. I love that it's you've given it a name. You've given it like a creature.
My therapist made me do it.
I think that's a really good way.
Your
actually.
inner critic might as well be a poem, like for kids. It's
Yeah.
like Tito the mosquito,
Yeah.
like buzzing around.
Just giving you crap you don't need. It's nonsense.
Tito the mosquito was relentless, always making sounds.
It's
Let's
the
freestyle.
fine line. It's
Let's
like
go.
a fine line that because sometimes sometimes you kind of have to be able to trust Tito the mosquito.
Oh my God.
But
right.
like when to know that fine line, I think is like the
That's
really
what putting
hard
distance
part.
with it helps. So I try to have a critical lens and then take a step back and just give myself some grace. It's always good to have like supportive people around you that are also honest.
Oh yeah, I have some honest
and
friends.
gentle. Yeah, so I don't know if gentle comes with the package, but people that will like are sincerely there. To be honest, it's very hard for me to believe people, even like my closest friends. But still, it's good to like soundboard. And sometimes get that objectivity. For me, what really drives it home is the response after the fact. So what drew me to poetry originally, and I'm going to quote Sarah Kay, an American poet.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, I'm going to paraphrase, not quote her, because I don't remember exactly what she said, but in her TED Talk, she explained the experience of the first time that she performed. And it's literally what happened for me, and since then has projectile, launched me into this space. And it's the experience of, you heard me, you saw me, and you heard and saw yourself in me. And then further to that, we've now added another dimension of perspective or of storytelling. And this is why I'm so deeply passionate about storytelling, because it breaks down the confines of stigmas, of stereotypes, of misunderstandings, misconceptions. And ancestrally speaking, since the dawn of time, we come from orators, we come from storytellers. And I think going back to those roots as well would recenter everyone, I think.
It is loud, isn't it? I'll go and tell them.
They'll just cut this part out, or they won't.
Yeah,
and it'll be
hopefully
awkward
they trim this part. Well, we could ad lib. So Shy, tell me. Can I just say your name is so apt. I'm a very firm believer in names having an impact on character and essence, and to some extent sometimes even physical characteristics. And your name is just so apt, so on point. Your parents knew what they were doing when they named you that.
They only got one thing right, is what I always say. This is the part where you disagree with me, Hawraa. No, but my name wasn't always Shirey. Firstly, I have a twin brother. His name is Shire, and so his name means poet. My name means poetry. It's like an Arab Sha'ar.
Yeah.
And we were born as Ashik and Ashika.
Okay.
Which means, Ashik means lover.
Yes.
And Ashika means romantic who always pines for love, which would have been pathetic and sad.
No, that's profound.
I feel like I would have spent my whole life being this, basically what I am, but with a sad name, right?
Basically what I am, but called out every time.
But I always, But I always say, because at 5 they changed it to Shire and Shirey.
Okay.
It felt like there was an outlet to put the pining through, which was poetry. And at least now I get something out of it.
That's actually very interesting. That would definitely have, I don't know if you've ever gone introspective as to what that would have done to influence your character. Do they ever talk about how your character or the way that you were changed, maybe, even your behavior?
Not really, because
No?
I kind of spent most of my time being brought up by maids, which is really sad. But also very privileged.
No wonder it was Ashika. I was so desperately yearning for love, and you got the nannies. Oh, no.
I used to write little goodbye farewell notes to any of the maids that left and be like, please come back.
Oh, Bobby, my heart.
Anyways, that was some ad lib while the
Ad lib,
boys
yes.
were just...
So we digress.
I will ask the next question, and
Sure,
you
go
both
for it.
can please answer. Do you guys think that art plays an important part in political movements? Like what's going on now or in general?
Yeah, I certainly do, because I think it's fair to what you were saying, Hawraa, it's kind of like a universal language. It's sticking to the sort of core of the thing and just trying to be transparent about it, because everyone's supposed to make their own minds about it, and they will. Mm-hmm. So if you really have a question that is worth asking, or you feel like that and you put it out there, that's what you really want.
Totally.
Is for people to be able to have that connection with, and that can be that's what I'm seeing recently that is really sort of exciting to me, even about spoken word, because I'm new to this. I'm very new to the English side of sort of writing. So because I was always grew up with the Persian stuff.
Yeah.
And I started writing in Farsi and everything, and poems in Farsi with lyrics.
Can
and
I
stuff.
interrupt to ask a question? When you were writing in Farsi, were you also kind of exploring themes of activism and that kind of stuff?
No, I was writing about beer and boobies.
But you know what? Even while writing about beer and boobies, it was probably way more profound than anything. Yeah, he did.
17, 18.
I caught it. He did. I did. But it would still, in Farsi, would be still way more profound.
I was a 17-year-old in love with AC/DC, so there's
Okay.
I'm so sorry I asked the follow-up
question. A lot is
question.
making sense about you, Yaru. More is coming to light.
So then he became Yaru and started writing politically English type poetry.
I started I think the first thing that I started in about the first time I started to really try and have an impact with the work, other than just people vibing with it and feeling good, or just saying to get a reaction. I remember it was again with the sort of, because singing for women is banned in Iran.
Wow.
So you
Yeah.
kind of like, it's getting, people are finding loopholes, but technically still is not, you can't have a solo concert as a woman.
Right.
Done. Unless
Wow.
the audience is entirely woman and it's entirely all women, everywhere women.
That's
So,
Yes, because a woman's
Yeah.
voice is not meant to be heard outside her home.
yeah.
I say that sarcastically, and obviously I do not agree.
Yeah.
I don't
So-
even think Dubai has that rule.
So we, but
The
there,
UAE.
but that doesn't mean that women
I've
don't sing.
Yeah, I've never heard of it in Dubai, but yeah,
Okay,
Iran's a bit
great.
special.
Sorry.
There's,
Yep.
there's
Go
so
on.
many, like, there were so many artists that I knew that, like, they were back there singing.
Mm.
So that was my first thing. I started, like, I wrote a song for them, and that was the first song that I wrote, and it sort of made, because I wrote it for Yazzie. It's such, I know. I know my shit. I'm a poet.
Okay, okay.
So I gotta tell
He's a
everybody
poet and he
later,
knows it.
He's a
Alright.
poet and he
Yeah.
knows it. Yep, yep,
'Cause
And we
I
were talking about
I wrote
self-doubt
this song
earlier.
about my
We've
wife.
come 360. No,
Yeah.
180.
Yeah, from boobies to I wrote a poem for my partner.
Yeah.
For my partner.
And I'm
Before we were
So
even
great.
like, before we even met, it's about a long distance relationship. I'll play that for
Oh
you
my
later.
god, please.
that's adorable.
Yeah. Yara's music
and
is
then one of the
incredible.
female singers, Farawaz, she sang on it, and it was like incredible. We had a music video and everything. As well, I'm not gonna say the first, but it was like amongst the first 10 of
Cool.
like female sort of indie underground like jazz artists, for
In there.
example. That
So
are
was
being
this being
paid.
like streamed in Iran?
YouTube, and they have their own platforms.
Okay.
So they had we had,
Because Iran's
now
kind
it's
of like
mainly
China. They've
YouTube.
got their own like social media.
Now it's
their
mainly
own.
YouTube,
Okay.
because YouTube's taken kind of over. They're trying to push back on it, like do
Underground
the China thing.
movement. How very punk of you.
But I didn't know, because
Speaking of art being political, like literally just existing as like a female artist or talking about female artistry is in and of itself political.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's why I hate and love the question, or love the question, why does it always have to be political?
Yes, it is. It's a love-hate relationship, because the thing is, sometimes I don't know about you. I don't want to be.
No.
I didn't choose to be, and it took
Agreed.
me a long time. To be honest, I grew up very sheltered, so I came to this stuff in my 20s and through uni, and I'm sure that's a common experience. University tends to open
Yeah.
up a lot of
Yeah.
people to different people and experiences, lived experiences, diversity of life, and through that, realizing that if I walk into different spaces, because I was living in a bubble, but if I walk into different spaces, literally just existing as myself was inherently political. And talking about, my day-to-day or challenges was inherently political. Anytime
When you say bubble,
Yeah.
were you like you were living in a bubble before that, as in you were living within your diaspora, you were living with Arabs, like in your own kind of suburb in Sydney,
Yes,
and then
physical
when you went to
bubble,
university, that was
Yes.
your first experience of,
Yes.
oh my God, I'm a minority here, I don't understand.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Continue.
Yes, exactly.
Continue.
Thank you for clarifying. And furthermore, it then compounded and accelerated very quickly once I got introduced to spoken word poetry.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I fell into
Say
it by
more.
accident. And not by accident, it was just like an outlet during a time where I was grieving. And shout out Bankstown Poetry Slam in Sydney. That was the first platform, and they embraced me. And I look back at some of my earlier performances, and I'm sure a lot of people look back and think, oh, that was so cringe. But sincerely, there are some things I'm like, why were you encouraging this? But honestly, because
Subjective.
it's subjective. They created such a warm space.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have had the same trajectory if I was introduced to it anywhere else. And falling into poetry and finally having an outlet and language to understand my experiences in the world, it accelerated that view. I became extremely political by
Yeah.
virtue of being exposed to spoken word poetry. And my initial poetry was very therapeutic. It was a dump of unresolved things from like high school. I'm in my 20s and I'm writing poetry about my high school bully because I just needed to get
Yeah.
it out of my system.
Yeah.
So once all of that got out of my system, it just became natural. But
It's like, what am I angry about now?
what am I angry about? But and I realized I was like, why am I always indignant?
Because indignant makes good art.
Indignant makes good art.
But there's always something to be angry
There's
about.
always something to be
Yeah.
angry about, but also I couldn't help it. Going back to the commentary around authenticity and clickbaity and was it true to me or has anyone done this before? I was very much. And I fell into this very early and quickly like stopped myself of falling into like clickbaity topical things and like falling into a pattern of imitating American poets, not necessarily with the accent, but like I am me and I am
Woman.
Thankfully that happened very early on and for a very short period because it was not authentic. So very quickly I was able to like pull myself out of that. And just tell myself, it doesn't have to be, newsworthy. It doesn't have to be topical. And that was something I struggled with, people that were able to write topical poetry.
Yeah.
Like things that are in pop culture, in the news.
Happening right now. But it
Happening
doesn't
right
necessarily
now.
mean anything.
But it
to
doesn't
you.
necessarily mean anything.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I
Yeah.
used to look at that and be like, wow, that's a skill. But now I look at it and I don't diminish it. Some poetry is really great. I'm like, oh, that was actually really clever. But for myself, I'm like, if I don't feel it and mean it, like if it doesn't
Then I can't
happen
write
to
it.
be topical, then I can't write it.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to deliberately go out of my way to be pop culture-y or
Yeah.
clickbaity.
No,
or
if you wanted to do that, you'd be a journalist or a,
exactly.
an editorial person
Absolutely.
or a news
I think
anchor
it's
but
like
you're
that
not.
with every art. I feel
Yeah.
like that's what you want.
But
with
do you know what
every
I've noticed, like looking back on some of my writing, because I went that route of just writing what I was feeling at the time and what was true to myself or what I was navigating because it was very therapeutic for me. So it was cheap therapy.
You had 73. You had 73 poems about one boy. 'Cause
Yeah,
that's
something like
how
that.
I feel.
Something like that, right? So because it was like things that I was actually living through and navigating and figuring out and just trying to find the language for, I look back at it and I was like, wow, this is actually, for lack of a better word, timeless. Like it's
Totally.
not dated. I can perform this again.
And that is the thing that exactly your point about trying to write about topical. I fall into that trap all the time. I work in advertising. And so someone's like, here's the brief, here's the audience, here's the moment, here's it. We want to go viral, make it happen. And so I am so well rehearsed in that.
Yes.
When I see a clickbaity moment and an opportunity to be topical and to capture an audience like that, I am so often tempted to take that opportunity. And I have been on stages and performed certain things and thought,
Cringed at yourself.
that didn't feel right. Like it just, cringed and like full
There's
body
a price to
cringe.
pay.
Sometimes it hits.
Yep.
But again, it was like, it's Invasion Day, it's Palestine. It hits because it hits, not
Yes.
because it was topical.
Yes.
Right? Like, I do comedy too. So, like, trying to write a joke about, like, Optus, the network going down. I will never be that kind of comic.
Yeah.
I am a trauma poet.
Yeah.
I am a trauma comic.
Yes.
I am not a current observational poet or comic.
Yes.
That is not who I am. I need to feel it, to write it, to do it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that authenticity as well is inherently political
Yeah.
because, and when we say political, we're not talking about the structures that exist.
That were invented by white men.
Invented and codified by white people, thank you, and like colonizers and just like spread. What we call democracy today isn't really. It's an illusion. It's not
It's their
sincerely.
solution
So when
to
we're
this.
talking political,
Yeah.
we're not necessarily talking about these structures, but we're talking about I guess political lines.
Yeah, identity matters or things that cause like tension.
Yeah, and
sometimes.
honestly,
You
so
go-
much of ourselves causes tension.
right, but we
Yeah.
didn't start the tension.
We didn't start the tension.
Right.
We never start the
and
tension.
yet when we bring emotion, like when we bring emotion or politics to the table, when people are like, why does everything have to be political with you? It's like, sorry. So you want to cause all of this pain and suffering in my life and in my ancestors and all of this stuff, but you want me to do the emotional labor by myself? Okay, why?
Why?
That doesn't make any sense to me. And my response to, I think, like how I get into spoken word and all of that in the end was like, I was asked that question so many times. I was the dinner party guest who was like, everyone's just trying to have a good time and have some drinks, and Shai's just brought up colonization again.
I do this all the time.
All the time. But then I realized if someone gives me a mic and
That's
makes
where
all
I'm
of
going.
these people sit in front of me,
Yes.
then they're like going to applaud me for my art instead of roll my eyes and be like, this is not the time.
Yes.
Someone turn up the Beyonce and shut
Yes.
this bitch up, right? And so I started looking at it like this is my Trojan horse.
The microphone.
Right? This is my Trojan horse. I'm going to make you feel something
Yep.
before you think it.
Yes.
And then you will actually be able to engage in a conversation without being like, why do we have to talk about this all the time?
Yeah.
Because you can feel it first before just having to engage your brain in
So
it.
you make him feel it by like art first.
Art.
Yeah.
And then they're willing to engage with you. But if everyone's walking around lecturing each other,
Nah.
And that's
Who wants to
extremely
listen?
profound. That is
Yeah, that's
a very
very interesting,
profound
yeah.
and a very great observation. I have noticed that there is definitely a massive difference to how you're received, like on a platform or on a mic, you know, in a context that is presenting you as a speaker versus in social settings. And I find myself at ease speaking about somewhat difficult topics behind a microphone in
Yeah.
front of an audience.
Yeah.
Than in social circles with friends, let alone acquaintances.
Yeah.
But I get into this, like I fall into this all the time at work. Somehow in the workplaces that I've been in, I've always been the one that's just like always talking about something political.
same.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, it's not on purpose. It's
Girl,
literally
same.
affecting me in my everyday.
Yeah.
But speaking of, in your opinions, do you think that there is a wrong or a bad way to write politically, or and by write anything in terms of poetry or art, anything adjacent to that? I want to give it a broad definition, but is there a way to do political wrong?
Yeah,
I have some thoughts and feelings, but
Can I start?
Let's go.
Get in
No,
there.
I think because I feel like if you wanna take sides politically, you better know exactly what you're talking about.
Totally.
Because if
That
you don't,
writes
if you're
off how
unsure-
many people
Yeah.
with platforms and followers, and
That's like not me. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I don't wanna. I'm seeing things that I understand to be wrong,
Yeah.
and I'm raising
Yeah.
that this
Yeah.
is off because it's of these reasons that make total sense to me.
Totally.
If there's something that in it that I don't know, I don't, because otherwise I feel like you're kind of contributing to like just becoming a tool again for
Yes.
like someone else's dream.
yep,
That
you're
you
adding
don't
to the
even
white
know.
noise.
And that's
Yeah.
dangerous. It's dangerous.
Oh my
too.
So
god, it has been so many
dangerous.
times. Yeah.
I mean, we're actively witnessing this. We're actively
Right.
witnessing this, right? Like, you have like artists that are hijacking, if you want to look at current affairs and what's happening in the news in the world. I mean, we are recording this just before a Poets for Palestine event. So it's quite apt, you know, and just, hijacking or appropriating, art and music and using it to further their own like propaganda or their own, mission and messaging.
Yeah.
And they're functioning in like little echo chambers. So they're in like denial that this is actually what they're doing.
Going on. Yeah.
But what Shai, what is your view on that one in terms of the political? Can you do it wrong?
Yeah. I mean, you can do anything wrong if you try hard enough.
Or not try at all?
Not try at all.
No,
I
not
kind
try
of
at
have
all, yeah.
two opinions on the matter.
Tell
One,
me.
like, fuck misinformation.
Oh.
Right? Like, if you're using your art and, like, your voice or, like, your music, it's propaganda, right? Like, it's terrible. And it's, like, whether that's, like, if we want to go science anti-vaxxer, if we want to go to political, you want to go, like if we go back to like the dawn of time and think of like cowboys and westerns and like colonialism is very good at propaganda. So yes, like there is definitely a terrible and a bad way to do art, and that is to spread misinformation and to use it to hate and to advance
To use it.
to use
Pretty
it.
much
Very
to
good.
use
Yeah.
it,
But it's interesting though, because I try to call myself out on this because I use my poetry and my art, right? Not necessarily to further a cause, but if I have a deep belief in something, it's going to be reflected in my poetry.
Totally.
So just because I don't agree with the other person, can I say that they are wrong?
That's where I was going with it. Totally.
Carry on.
Yeah. No,
Please
no,
finish
that's
the
exactly
thought,
no.
right?
That's exactly where I was going with it.
Because it's like free speech, right? It's free
But, like,
speech is.
should speech be free for everybody, or should some people have to pay for it?
I find myself grappling with that, honestly, because I think to myself the amount of times I've been silenced and censored, censored, and I'm talking also in my own community spaces, not
100%.
necessarily by external pressures or bigots or racists. Like I'm talking in my own community spaces. So if we took that, who's the arbiter? Like it's such a dangerous line.
Look, if you're okay, so let's not talk about like necessarily opinions, right? Because that's subjective, right?
Yes.
So it's not right wing versus left wing. It's not like anti-vaxxers versus vaxxers.
No, absolutely.
It's not like misinformation. Forget all of that for a second. I think whatever side you're sitting on, if your art, whatever form that is going to incite violence or a mass negative effect on a community, then that is the bad way to use it.
Absolutely.
Art is resistance, but it is peaceful, and it is not.
Yes. No, there's absolutely no. From where I'm sitting, I don't think you can argue with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky, but because sometimes I'm thinking, like I totally get that. I can't go past that line myself either, but sometimes things are violent. So what, like if a group needs to be violent to defend themselves.
Yeah, so now you're talking about resistance, right? Resistance by any means necessary, or armed resistance, which there are foundations for in international law. And there are some legalities around it. But in terms of, so that we're not like going outside of the scope of things where, let's keep it to kind of art and poetry and
I see what you mean.
The various forms of art instead of like armed resistance, like physical armed resistance. So let's just bring it back to art if that's okay.
Because I was thinking,
because we can go into that.
Like I feel like if you're being, for example, things can get a little bit metal, basically.
Yeah.
Like art is not always jazz.
Yes.
And that's, I think, okay.
No, absolutely, because art is beautiful even when it's gruesome.
Yeah.
Like, for example, some of the portraits
The
that have been
intent is
coming out
beautiful.
of...
And I don't know if like resistance is, I think it's like, resistance isn't hate.
No, it's
right?
not.
It's still like it's coming from a place of like self-defense.
should
We need to
never
motivate
be.
this community
Yes.
to. But the minute you start to
Survival,
incite
self-determination, self-actualization. Yes.
right? And if you go, controversial topic, but it's Poets for Palestine tonight. If you go ask a man or a child or a woman in Gaza, like, what do you think of Jewish people? Not Israelis, Jewish people.
Yeah.
I could put $100 down to say that you're not going to find so many of them with hate in their heart for all Jewish people. And yet there has been countless videos and countless research and like all of this evidence to show that when you go into an Israeli school and you ask them about Arabs, Muslims, brown people, but mostly Arabs or Muslims, it is hate. They have instilled hate through art and education. And
Yes.
that's it's just different.
Absolutely.
Yes, but like the way to challenge that, I think, is like being exactly aware of that. That these people are being fed. Because I went through that in Iran. Because they teach us very similar things. There's a lot of propaganda.
Absolutely.
Like you grew up in and there are things like my theater subjects were like about the revolution. I didn't even realize that. I played the Shah in one of them.
Oh no!
And literally,
Was the Shah the bad character?
Yeah.
Does he kind of look like the Shah
done?
now?
You know how he went
I actually
down?
don't know what the Shah looked like.
I was like 11 at the time.
Oh,
yeah.
goodness.
And the way he was, like everything that I need to do, just come in the room and be like, oh, he sees the people, panics, and then has a heart attack and dies.
That was your
I didn't
only
even have a
role.
dialogue, yeah.
Yes, and of
But
course
like-
he panicked because he was cowardly and unfit and he
Yes,
needs to be
yes.
toppled. And yes, so it's messaging. It's
All of
messaging.
that,
there you
Inherently in your head,
Yeah.
you're thinking.
Like the fact that I need to now explain that.
Yes.
like that was interesting that you explained. I was like, yeah, I should explain that because like I don't explain that to anyone that I know, like from Iran, because
Yes.
everyone knows that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
you're always seeing these books, and
Yes.
so the propaganda does work. You are at the end of the day, you are what you see
Yes.
Read,
and what
consume.
you read.
Yeah.
And if you haven't read certain things, you haven't seen certain things, you're gonna have a certain sort of maybe
Yeah.
misunderstanding of the word.
And for me, I'm what poetry and also, believe it or not, my job in human resources, which is now often referred to as people and culture.
Why did they do that? PNC.
I think it's to give it PNC. I think it's to give it more of a scope and also a humanistic approach as opposed to treating humans as actual physical resources.
I fully understand. I just resent the use of culture in white colonial spaces that were invented by corporate slaves.
Oh, I agree. Don't get me started on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives within corporations, please. All panels of like white women talking about diversity, and I was like, I'm hello. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. But for me, what I've really taken away, and I'm always open to being proven wrong. I'm always open to being given a different perspective or another lens or another dimension to something. But this is one thing that has just, if anything, not just cemented, but gone deeper and deeper, rooted within me, which is the importance of language and words and messaging. And I've just become so hyper aware of it all around me. And because of poetry and because of my job, because written communications and, there's things that you do and don't say, like,
Right.
and I'm advising, managers all the time what they can and can't say.
And I'm
Things
guessing
like-
you're talking about it more broadly, more nuanced rather than broadly.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
So, and then apply that to every day, right? So the news and the article headlines, I'm just so hyper aware when they're, victim blaming or when they're reporting that, 10 Palestinian children died, and then there's by what, how, like passive.
Dropped dead.
Yeah, they just dropped dead out of nowhere. Like, that passive language, or when they're reporting on domestic violence cases, it's like, oh, loving husband, had a moment and snapped and killed. I've just, because of poetry and my job, and they inform one another.
Yeah.
And also, I would even say my faith. And going back to such deep, because like Arabic and the Quranic Arabic is inherently like poetic, and it's so deep and rich. And when you want to break down the interpretation of one word, you're writing an entire paragraph just to understand and dissect one word. So combine all of those and pursuing a deeper understanding of my heritage and identity, all of that, it's just cemented this hyper awareness for messaging and language and inappropriate use of certain language. So I think in those instances, you can write political content wrong. If you aren't walking in with eyes wide open as to what message you are sending by saying X, Y, Z, what tone you are setting.
It's dangerous.
It's dangerous, absolutely. So I think absolutely being mindful and aware of the language that you're using. Brene Brown's recent letter is an excellent example of, I don't know if we're allowed to swear on this podcast, but like cockfuckery, absolute like cockfuckery.
Those books are burned.
It is the weakest
gone.
both sides-ish nonsense I've ever seen in my life. And it's
nonsense.
barely
Oh,
even
I've
both
read that,
sides-ist.
It's not both sides.
No, like her letter,
It
barely.
is far more, it is far more one-sided than it is.
It's an excellent example, like when you break it down and dissect it. And you know who does this really well? Daniel Maté, Gabor Maté's son. He's very pro-Palestine. He dissected Brene Brown's letter, and
Great.
it was
We love to
beautiful
hear it.
because he sat there and he's saying, like, so this is what you're saying when you say this.
Yeah.
And I gravitate towards content like that all the time because I'm like, this is inherently me, just always looking at the language and the messaging.
And you also had all of this time to
Yes.
sit.
You had this time to
as
articulate.
a professional communicator, teaching other people how to communicate professionally and personally within their lives.
Absolutely.
Writing books about it, having TED Talks about it, having millions of people pay hundreds of dollars for each ticket, and then you finally come out with what celebrities were doing 6 months ago, but yes, we condemn Hamas, like everything is wrong, blah blah blah. Also, like the atrocities that are happening in Gaza are so terrible. Oh, are they just happening?
Yeah, they're just
Like
happening.
what?
Yeah, it was passive language, and it's very clear, like where her sympathy lies. But she's just such a great not to give her much airtime or breathing room or to platform her in any way anymore. But she is, a great, that letter is actually a great example of like messaging and what you're trying to get across. And if you think about it, I don't know about all over the world, but I know at least like in America and here in Australia, politicians have entire staffs, like a whole office building full of people killing themselves over their speech and what language they're using, what message they're sending, how they're presenting themselves. And, it then ties into, propaganda, obviously.
Media, they can cut things.
Media,
they can do
sound bites, etc. Like we're in an era where, it's not safe.
No.
It's not safe.
No, it's because there's so much information, but it's like...
But not all information is good information.
It's not a lot of information about where the information is coming from.
And the sad part is the more information that is out there, I totally feel like the people who like win in this war of confusion is the right.
Yes.
They're the right, because like everyone is so hard to make the morally correct decision, to take a stance on it, because it takes so much convincing that like if they're on the sidelines, we lose. And so they're not only winning by convincing people to be anti-abortion, anti-Palestine, we're also losing because they're just confusing the shit out of other people who could have been on our side.
Yes, they're convincing them to opt out.
This is the whole
vote no,
vote, the
referendum, which was a total joke. But the Israel-Palestine thing is an excellent example though, because how many times, I don't know about you, but countless times I've been faced with it's too complex.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm not going to lie to you. When I was younger, it's not complex, but they make it sound so convoluted and complex.
100%.
And you look at representatives that represent, that other side, always come out and be like, it's complicated, it's complex, there are nuances here to explore. No, it really isn't.
Just to benefit from confusing.
I've written an entire poem about it that I will not be reading tonight about, it's complicated.
What's actually complicated?
It has complicated? The line, at some point it has the line, Avril Lavigne is complicated, but a 75-year-old genocide is not. But there are many things that are complicated and many things that are complex, and there are many things that are nuanced, and there are many things and it is not.
And I'm a huge fan of nuance. I think nuance gets lost a lot. It's important, it's critical, but
nuance is also used against us.
It's used against, no, that's not nuance that's being used against us. Nuance is differentiating between what anti-Semitism is and what anti-Zionist is. Nuance is differentiating between, Judaism and Zionism.
But what about when nuance is used to...
what they're doing there is convoluting it. That's convoluting it, not nuance. It's muddying the waters is what that is. And I think that's a grave injustice, and a quite literally grave injustice. Like it's leading to massacres all over the world. I mean, the Congo, Sudan.
It often feels like as if it's like weaponized to just hire
absolutely.
Like I certainly have felt very tired of it during times, especially like during the Women Life Freedom movement that was happening in last year. There were so many times that it's just like what just and that, but then you feel like okay, that's how they win. Like when
that's
you do
that.
win.
That's how they win.
This is why we need echo
they
chambers
exhaust
of
you.
our own. This is why we need safe spaces
and communities.
and community.
I oscillate between wanting an echo space and being adamantly against it, because every time I'm not in an echo space, I'm reminded that like this world is so full of the good, the bad, the ugly. There's just so much, and nothing surprises me anymore. And sometimes when I see people in their echo chambers, I feel like they just drown and they lose sight of a bigger picture.
But can we not have both?
I think it's important to have spaces where you're mostly kind of like-minded and you feel safe and nurtured, but not to isolate yourself into that or insulate yourself exclusively into that.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And also you will lose sight and then just get infuriated every time, and like we won't even know how to deal with the real world if that happens.
Absolutely.
So that's never a good idea.
But we can talk about this forever.
Oh, we really could. I feel like we maybe should.
Maybe should.
Or maybe
I don't
not
know.
this time.
I don't know how Ryan and Jason from Vibe Union would appreciate that.
I mean, we have a whole event to run.
We have a whole event to run. They've graciously given us a platform, two white boys, very very consciously recognizing that they need to step aside and hand over the mic, which, can I just say, that is what an allyship is, and inclusion. It's very deliberate and calculated. Like, you know what, this isn't our platform. We should
100%.
hand over the mic.
And can I just say, did I not tell you?
You did. You vouched for them, and they came through. They followed through. I was skeptical. I won't lie. When I first met the boys,
I mean, who wouldn't be?
Who wouldn't be? But you know what? They did. They've come through, and I'm very impressed. Shall we tell them about what's coming up for Vibe Union?
Yeah, let's do it. You do it, because I like your voice better than mine.
What?
Yeah. She's blushing. You just can't see it because the camera is so far away.
Oh, no. It's reflecting off my lipstick. So, Vibe Union, they have regular events. Our next 2 events, I'm just hijacking this as if it's my own.
You're now a part of it.
I am now inherently I am Vibe Union.
This is how we get appropriated, babe.
We're appropriating white people. So we have they've got regular podcasts always being up, music events more. Next 2 events. So March 16th, the event is Tones at Ringo Bar in Brunswick, live recording session and showcase of Melbourne talent. It's really great space to be in, supported by Mountain Goat Brewery.
Wow. Mountain
Goat Brewery, everyone. They're coming through with the sponsorship, making these events possible, featuring Rhath, Riordan, Naive, Adam and Vina. Free entry for that one. And the second event, March 28th, Maxwell Brady's Electric Troubadour album launch. I said that unsure, but it's Maxwell.
I'm so glad I got you to do this.
Electric Troubadour album launch at the Workers Club. Why should you go? Well, it's his debut album, Maxwell Brady. Look him up if you're not familiar. Psychedelic folk rock, if that's what you're into, or if you want to venture. I feel like that's up your alley, Yaru.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah, supported by Malibu Spacey and Big Stretch. Hey, you might be able to get into that event. It is $20 at the door, $15 for pre-sales. All tickets can be bought on vibeunion.com.au. And thanks to Music by Sixpence as well for this podcast.
And Sixpence is probably going to play after this. This is why they say that.
That's why we say that.
After the podcast?
Yeah.
Okay.
To
well,
give
thank
credit.
you for giving me your 2 pence. Cents?
2 cents, pence?
Please cut that out. Cut that out. I have a career in this country.
No. This was such a joy. Thank you to
so
Jason and Ryan for having us.
Thanks, and sorry for me being late.
No, you made a grand
thanks for
entrance like the
letting me
true
in.
artist.
We were following you on
Thank
Instagram
you.
stories, just like screaming
Yeah,
into the
we were
vortex.
actually,
Like,
your
he's in
Instagram
Collingwood.
stories, like, they sold you out. They called you out because we're like, if he can post on his stories, why isn't he here on time?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
but
like the artist you
fuckboy
are.
behavior.
No, I'm not gonna say that I did forget about this. I was just doing writing the portrait. I didn't know there was miscommunication.
He
I
was
didn't forget.
enthralled. He was entranced by his own creative process.
Okay, yeah.
No, but
no, good excuse.
no.
You're coming. She's trying to help you.
I'm helping you.
Yeah, I know, but I should I should own it and say.
Okay, you're trying to be an adult about it and take accountability. You know what? I respect that more. Shy, any last words?
Any
So
last
sorry.
words? Am I allowed to shamelessly promote non-Vibe Union events?
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're
we've
not
been given the
here.
platform. They're collaborative. They're open. And if they don't want it, they can cut it out.
I'm just going to make sure that the actual dates of this is right because I have
Get out there. Yeah, what?
Okay, great.
What do you have coming up?
On March 9th and 16th, there is going to be the Hate Race playing at the Malt House.
Okay.
And outside of the Hate Race, which is a really cool play, which is an adaptation of the book by Maxine Beniba Clark, who's an absolute legend. There will be Labrish, which is like a community arts program, and there will be a spoken word part of that night.
Nice.
On March 9th and March 16th, and there will be some feature poets who are actually here tonight.
Oh.
On 9th and 16th, and there will also be an open mic bit for poets who want to come try. Priority and probably almost exclusively will be, first to Black folks and then people of color.
How
Those
do
are the
people
only
get
people
tickets?
are open to.
Where can they find more information?
Great question. On the Malt House's Instagram, they have all of the information about Labrish. If you click on Labrish and check out the spoken word bit, you'll be able to sign up. Or if you just slide into my DMs, which is Shirey Says, I'm sure it'll be on this podcast. I'm tagged
It'll be
everywhere on Vibe
tagged.
Union. I'm the idiot who always makes idiotic comments on things.
Can you please stop diminishing yourself?
Yeah.
You are glorious, and we are all
Yeah,
blessed to
please.
be in your presence.
I have tall poppy syndrome. I'm trying to get an Australian passport.
Yeah, I have to say
Is it working? Once they give me the passport, I'm going to be obnoxious.
That was perfect. Legit. Talk about context. On point. Right there.
Cool. Yeah. So come to the Malt House. Come to Labrish. Please perform. It'll be a very, very community-oriented event with a lot of Black artists and a lot of people of color, and a very safe space.
Amazing. I'm so excited.
Me too.
So yourself, Vibe Union, lots of projects on the go. I've got a couple things, but it's best to find me on Instagram to keep up on that stuff. Some things haven't been advertised or announced yet, so I don't like to speak too soon.
I'm excited.
Yes, exciting times ahead. But thank you.
Yara. Do you have any last
Oh, thank you.
words?
No.
No.
Thank you. Love
Thank
you too.
you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.